Direct News TV. November 11, 2023. Israel-Hamas war live, pleas for help as Israel bombards Gaza hospitals. Israeli forces attack front gate of Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital, where thousands of patients and displaced Palestinians have been sheltering. Palestine Red Crescent chief tells UN Security Council that Gaza hospitals are being deliberately targeted to force civilians out of the enclave. Israel says 100,000 Palestinians have moved southwards in Gaza in the last 2 days. Many Palestinians say they remain trapped amid continued fighting. At least 11,078 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7. In Israel, the death toll stands at more than 1,200. What are the limits of Israel's right to self-defense? Israel's bombardment of Gaza has killed at least 11,078 Palestinians, including more than 4,500 children, according to officials in the Hamas-governed enclave. The mounting death toll has prompted heated debate about whether Israel's response to Hamas's October 7 attacks is consistent with international law. On Wednesday, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk said that both Israel and Hamas had carried out war crimes during the month-long conflict. What are the limits to the principle of self-defense? On Al Jazeera's Upfront this week, Mark Lamont-Hill challenged David Friedman, former U.S. ambassador to Israel under President Donald Trump, on whether Israel is respecting international law. UN says lives of children in Gaza, hanging on by a thread. The lives of 1 million children in Gaza are hanging on by a thread, UNICEF's Middle East and North Africa Regional Director Adel Koder said. Thousands and thousands of children remain in northern Gaza as hostilities intensify. These children have nowhere to go and are at extreme risk, Koder said in a statement. The protection of hospitals and delivery of life-saving medical supplies is an obligation under the laws of war, and both are needed now. Gaza's first responders risk their lives amid Israeli bombardment. As Israel's bombardment of Gaza continues with no end in sight, the enclave's first responders are working around the clock with limited resources and no guarantee of their safety. Al Jazeera followed members of the civil defense last month as they risked their lives racing injured people to hospitals and digging children out of the rubble. With no medical supplies, doctors struggled to treat emergency patients. A doctor at the Indonesian hospital in Gaza. We work 24/7, and if we take a rest, it's a maximum of 2 hours, then we're back on duty because of the increased aggression on Gaza. But more importantly, there is a serious shortage of medical supplies, especially anesthetics. Today, we've run out of the kind we use in emergency cases, so we've resorted to alternative medicines for emergency patients. When it comes to fatigue, the medical staff is exhausted with no rest, but add to it the fact that there's a shortage of medical staff. Many of them lost their family members and their homes in the bombings, and some of them have to move their families to the south, and this is affecting the operations of the hospital. In case you're just joining, it's almost 6:30 a.m., 4:30 Greenwich Mean Time, in the occupied Palestinian territories and Israel, and these are the most significant developments in the past few hours. Explosions and gunfire as Israeli forces conduct raids across the occupied West Bank. MSF International says it has lost contact with staff at Al-Shifa hospital. WHO chief extremely disturbed by strikes in vicinity of Al-Shifa hospital. Palestine Red Crescent chief tells UN Gaza's hospitals deliberately targeted. Israel says more than 100,000 Palestinians fled southwards in Gaza in the last 2 days. Palestinians reported killed in Israeli military corridor between North and South Gaza, UN says. The Israeli government revised the number of people killed in the October 7 Hamas attacks down to about 1,200, saying the initial figure of 1,400 included Hamas fighters. Pro-Palestinian supporters rally in New York City for Gaza ceasefire. Hamas and Israel reportedly in talks on the release of civilian captives. Pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel protesters clash in Melbourne. MSF reports dramatic intensification of attacks on Al-Shifa Hospital. The medical charity MSF International said attacks on the Al-Shifa Hospital have dramatically intensified in the last few hours and staff have reported a catastrophic situation. We urgently reiterate our calls to stop the attacks against hospitals and for the protection of medical facilities, medical staff, and patients, the organization said. MSF also repeated an earlier notice that it was unable to contact its staff at the hospital and that it was extremely concerned about their safety and that of patients. Japan wants to play lead role to end Gaza crisis, implement two-state solution, report. Japan's Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa said her country wants to take a lead in efforts to alleviate the deepening humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip, according to local media reports. Kamikawa said in an interview with Kyodo News that Japan will also proactively work with other nations towards the realization of a two-state solution to establish an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. We will aim to improve the humanitarian situation and help de-escalation in the short term, and approach them to realize a two-state solution in the long term, the foreign minister was quoted as saying. Another late night and early morning of raids at multiple locations across the occupied West Bank. Some of the more notable ones were in Jenin, which has become a flashpoint when it comes to these raids. Clashes have been ongoing and the situation has escalated in the last 30 minutes or so. We are told that explosive devices have been used against Israeli army members and their equipment, and we've seen videos emerge from there where you can hear a lot of loud explosions and lots of shooting. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.